Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Tuesday. The last Tuesday in February. It's Inside the Game. It's Jonathan, it's Nathan Wangler, and we're happy to have you along here wherever you're watching, near and far, on the National Soccer Network, on YouTube, Facebook, Roku as well. So good morning to everybody. Peter, good morning. Jimmy, good morning. Nathan, man, a busy Monday for me as always. How was your Monday?
Yeah, likewise. Really busy. I thought we had a really good conversation yesterday. I thought we dove into a lot of great things. And it's interesting. We got the conversation going. On social media, we got a lot of people hopping in. So I think it's going to be another great show today. It's interesting as we ramp up rather for the upcoming World Cup. Those conversations are starting to emerge a little bit more. And we talked a lot about the success and the player development on the women's side yesterday. But it'll be nice to kind of focus on the other side of the coin today, because I think a lot of people are looking for answers. I think a lot of people are looking for solutions. And I was actually just looking for odds at the World Cup, the one coming up. And I think we're the third lowest odds. So we're not last place, but we're certainly not up there. So it'd just be nice to chat about that. Outside of that, yesterday was yesterday. It was a lot of the same old stuff, but it was a great talk. So looking forward to another good one today.
Well, if it's your first time stopping by, don't forget hit that subscribe button, like us, share us with your friends and family. I oftentimes say if you have enemies, it's okay to share with them too. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer is what we always say, right? So, but either way, great show here today. We have a special guest coming on. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Yes, we did talk yesterday about the U.S. soccer. We talked about women's and men's soccer. And while I know it's unfair to compare, I don't think it's fair to say that I was comparing the men's and women's and how they play and the competitive aspect of their environments. I do think it's fair to compare outcomes. I do think it's fair to compare how when I watch a women's soccer team, I feel that they are more prepared and better, right? And again, we can talk about the competition all day long. We can talk about how maybe in the women's game, the level of play has started to really get much, much better than when it first started playing right back in the 1990s. Fine, fair point, get it. The men's soccer team have been playing in the United States for a long time. 1930, they played in the first one. They've been playing a long time. And I this argument that somehow, because soccer, from a viewership standpoint, is not the most popular sport in the country, that football is clearly the number one. And to be fair, I think football is here and everybody else is below. I don't think it's even close in regards to football. So, football number one, okay? I get it. I do. I understand it. But at the same time, we're not the player who is a player who's playing soccer today, they might be a football fan themselves, but they're still playing soccer. So I don't know if that argument holds any water. Okay, great. If these players could still play in empty stadiums, that wouldn't necessarily dictate how good or bad they are as players. There are 3 million players that play soccer in this country each and every year. We talked about how 80,000 kids are playing at the collegiate level on some level, right? We know that that's the case. And while those things don't necessarily matter in the sense of how they do on the international level, we have more kids, more players today playing across overseas in Europe, in the Premier League, in the Bundesliga. We have players playing in those leagues right now that will have an impact on the World Cup team coming up here in 26. So my question is the time now? Right? Fine. Throughout the past, throughout the fact that the United States has played in 37 World Cup games and they've won 9 games in that time period. Throw it out the window. Fine, sure. Go ahead. Who cares? Will they win some games here in 2026 and give themselves a chance to win a World Cup here on home soil?
Yeah.
That's really the question. Fine. If you don't like my logic, fair. But what are they going to do here in less than 18 months? What are they going to do? I'm
Especially
curious
when
about that.
yeah. Yeah, and they're the host country too, and they don't have to necessarily qualify either. Plus, you throw in the fact that they have a new coach. I mean, a lot of people wanted Greg Berhalter out, and so they finally got their wish, and now they got Pochettino in there. So, what can he do to actually get these guys ready to go in a situation like that. Because again, being the host country, you don't have to qualify. You're already in. So what can they do to ramp up? And I think a lot of it comes down to player development. But truth is, JT, is I have more questions than I do answers on this front because I
Well,
think a lot
then,
of it comes down to player development. So we'll figure it out as we go.
well, then that's what we're gonna lead this into our special guest today because this person, first off, I love this man. He's been unbelievable. I had a chance to meet him personally back in 2022. We were in Philadelphia, and I'm actually been 23 actually because it's brand new. It was 23, brand new year. Saw him on Podcast Row. Always watched him from afar. I mean, listened from afar is probably the better way to put it because this person's voice is iconic in soccer in this country, right? So iconic. You're talking about Big Ten Network. You're talking about part of the AC. I believe he does a lot of stuff in the ACC, Big East, right on that side of town, right? From North Carolina, big part of the women's game, NWSL, the Courage, right? I know that he's, I think, a voice for the Courage, but an iconic voice. Been a part of soccer for a long time. He even talked about what we were just discussing here a few moments ago about how he was a part of the press in 1994 for the Men's World Cup here in the United States. And I'm excited to have Mr. Dean Linke join us here this morning. So we're going to welcome Dean Linke onto the show. And Dean, man, welcome in.
Thank you. Great to be here. Congrats on the launch of the NSN and all the work you guys are doing. It's pretty impressive.
No, we are excited, and Dean here a while back actually had a chance to travel from North Carolina here into our studios in Shelby Township. Our current studios, we're in the process of building out our new studios, and you had a chance to call some USL Academy games for us, and I think you enjoyed that for the most part.
Absolutely. It was wonderful. And I mean, anytime I can be around good people talking about the game that shaped my life, I'm all in, and including that. And obviously, I'm entering my 19th season as the voice of North Carolina FC, formerly the Carolina Railhawks. I started with the Carolina Courage in 2000 with the launch of the WSA. And then when they weren't a part of the WPS, I was actually the lead voice for Fox Soccer Channel for the WPS. But when the Courage returned, I resumed that mantle. My background with the World Cup team is bigger than just being a member of the press, and I know you didn't mean any disrespect in that, but I was the junior press officer for the '90 team. I was the junior press officer for the '91 women. I was the senior press officer for the '92 Olympic team, and then the senior press officer, as you can see behind me, of the '94 World Cup team. So you talk about a full circle moment to come all the way back. I met my wife of 30 years through the World Cup. I met all pretty much the friends that shaped my life through the '94 World Cup. And if I say nothing else intelligent, which there's a good chance of it, I can tell people that the 2026 World Cup will be the biggest World Cup in the history of all World Cups. It will indeed change lives for all of those that get on board, particularly that those that get involved. The legendary Hank Steinbrecher, who was the Secretary General for the '94 World Cup, for the '99 women's team, and was around forever. He went into the United Soccer Coaches Hall of Fame, which I emceed, and he reminded particularly the 30 under 30 coaches at the time, he's like, jump on the rocket because we're going to take you to the moon. And he's talking about getting involved with the World Cup. That's how big it is. That seems like a simplistic statement, but he's totally right. I jumped on the rocket as a man who never even played soccer in '89. By the way, I'm from Ohio, so the Midwest connection to you guys. I'm from Toledo, which is basically Michigan. So I'm really I just happen to live in North Carolina. I'm more of one of you guys than anything else. You know what I mean? Midwest, baby, all day.
No, it's a great, and I think it's great because we're talking about this right now in regards to the World Cup in 2026, and I think as a soccer fan, I think all of us can say that we're fans of the game, right? And otherwise, obviously we're taking paychecks from it too, which is great. But being a fan is what I am first and foremost. And as a fan of the game, every time that the U.S. men's national team or women for that matter are playing in a World Cup, there's this emotional component that we all feel, right? And if you played the game, there's I think even more of a level of emotion in there, right? And maybe more so than that of a player, a person who's maybe just kind of watched the game and never really been experienced it from the same level that a player has. And the biggest thing that I've always noticed, and it's hard because you're cultivating the top players in the world, right? You're cultivating this talent. In a lot of cases, when you go across to other countries, these players are making way more money than the average player in the United States is making, right? So money is always a factor. But these teams are quote unquote all-star teams. That's what they are, right? We just call them national teams. They're all-star teams. They are the best players at their position on the field. And it's very hard to take the different levels of personalities with the talent and get them to mesh to go out there and win games. It's one of the most challenging things you can do. I'd like to know your take on that, Dean, because you've seen this first and foremost from your positions within the World Cups. It is a hard thing to be able to kind of manage, and we've seen the women's team. We've seen them struggle with that publicly with with different things here. We've seen documentaries about it, so I'm curious your take on if that is really a true factor in how where our team is lacking success on the men's side.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. It's definitely an all-star team for every World Cup team. And as we look and review all the World Cups where you consistently see the Germanys and the Spains and the Brazils, France up there, they've obviously been able to integrate the all-star notion a little bit better. It's not like they're all playing in the same league or anything else, but their kind of short-term and long-term integration of the players into the team and how they add the teams and how they schedule the teams is something that they perfected. I mean, long before even when I first got in 1994, they already kind of had a pretty good system for it. And then, as time has progressed, the game's gotten bigger and better and everything else. And they've made the right adjustments. To the USA's credit, the fact that, Major League Soccer is 30 years old is pretty amazing. But more importantly, the fact that they've created this, and it's not always seamless. They sometimes run into visa issues and that type of thing. But for the most part, fairly seamless way to get their top players overseas playing, hopefully playing. I mean, the ones that are over there that aren't playing enough, you worry about a little bit. I mean, for instance, Gio Reyna, you know what he can bring. But, look, if he's not playing, he's got to play so that coach the U.S. World Cup team kind of knows what he has. Make no mistake, though, as we get closer to the World Cup, they will do more camps. They'll come together even longer. And then prior to the World Cup, they'll come together for a long, long time as they'll get a massive break. And they'll try to use that to the best of their ability. You kind of said a lot and asked a lot. I mean, I don't know if you asked kind of what I'm thinking of the USA in the next World Cup. Do I think the USA is going to win the next World Cup? Absolutely not. Do I think the USA has to make it out of the first round? Absolutely yes. Anything short of getting out of the first round is a disappointment. They're probably at a point, because it's in this country and, it's 30 years after the fact, they probably need to win more than the quarterfinal game. They probably need to do what they did in 2002 when you go back and watch. Reyna clearly was a handball against Germany, which would have put him in the semifinals. You think about that. That's 2002. They're a non-handball call away from making the semifinals of the World Cup. And in between there's a World Cup that we didn't even make. So clearly along the way, U.S. Soccer had some hiccups, trying to figure something out. Obviously, they had a lot of drama with their coaching situation, probably too much drama to make people feel like, hey, they're the real deal. However, because I was there when they brought in an international coach with incredible pedigree in Bora, I'm probably, look, would I love to see an American coach? Yeah. I mean, it was Bruce Arena that was there in 2002 when they were making it happen. But the notion of having a coach with international pedigree, it worked in 94 by the standards of what they wanted to accomplish. I think it'll work. But Jonathan, back to your point, it's 100% an all-star game. It's a matter of how they navigate that as they all do their seasons. And, the U.S. is not quite there where those other countries that I mentioned are, but I think they're trying, and the more, every day at Soccer America, they put out, how the players are doing. The more and more I see how they're doing is incredible. And the more they kind of like dig deeper in the heritage world of finding connections that somebody had an American parent and that type of thing. I mean, that's not something that is a new phenomenon. We did that in '94. Out of nowhere, we found Thomas Dooley, who was, our holding mid. Ernie Stewart is a, similar person who ended up, heading up U.S. soccer. Now he's back in his, home country of Holland. And we're going to continue to do that. We're doing that right now. And because of that, I do think the U.S. can surprise a team. There's just no way you're going to get me to say, and I love U.S. soccer more than anybody, I think, that they're going to win this 2026 World Cup. I mean, it would be like Al Michaels said, it would take a miracle to make that happen, I think.
Well, and when you say the word miracle too, go ahead, Nathan. I want to touch on
No,
that in a second.
I
Go
just
ahead.
wanted to step back really quick because I know we're obviously getting into our subject, but I think it's important to ask, and maybe just simply because I don't know you as well, Dean, but I'd be interested to see what you think about this. You talked about how the game of soccer has helped you develop into the person you are, and obviously you work pretty much at the highest level, up at the Division I level, and the different things that you do. Number one, I want to figure out, how has soccer formed you into the person you are? If you were a player once upon a time, how that built you. But also, the one thing I always hear, and it's specifically at the youth level, with a lot of the coaches that I talk to, TJ Afachirochi is a good example. He coaches Grand Valley State women's soccer, and they've been really good. I mean, they've had a championship pedigree for years. He talks about how the game is growing leaps and bounds at the youth level. And I've been hearing that for a long time, that the game is growing in the United States. But in what points, where specifically has the game grown? And maybe, over your lifetime, how has it grown? And how is that not translated to success on the international level?
Wow, great question. First of all, I never played soccer, and my high school in Ohio still does not have soccer. I went to OU and I got an internship with, the U.S. Olympic Committee. Canoe and kayak picked me and soccer picked me. And I'm like, well, at least soccer has a ball. So I feel like I've got a lot of history to reflect on your question, because when I got out to U.S. soccer, at the time we were run by an English couple who were serving as the president / secretary general. And look, in England, soccer, when you roll out of bed, I mean, that's what you go with, right? But in this country, particularly with me coming in, who I was a quarterback, I was a shooting guard, I was a baseball player, I'm like, well, wait a second. I don't know about soccer. These dodgy and I'm talking early 90s, Big Dub. You probably weren't even, born yet. I'm not sure, but I don't think so. I think JT might have been, but just barely. But I basically had to, I feel good at the fact that I had to say, look, if I don't know about it and the editors don't know about it, we're going to have to educate. So my motto at the time was, I never said no. So if somebody wanted to talk to Tony Meola, they got him. Kobe Jones, they got him. John Harkes, they got him. Eric Ronaldo, they got him. Roy Wegerle, they got him. If somebody wanted to actually down to learn a little bit more, they got him. I said no to, I had 3 different pagers. And the only time I found any piece during that time was on an airplane. And even then, I kind of missed the fact that people were interested because the World Cup was so close. We did stuff with Ted Koppel at Nightline and Bob Costas and Pele and I were up with MasterCard. So yeah, it shaped me in so many ways. I met my wife, who's the protocol manager and now is the head of hospitality delivery for On Location for the 2026 World Cup. So she's definitely running it back with it returning to the North America. So I've seen the amazing progression. I am very involved on the youth side. I do a ton of work for the ECNL. I do a bunch of stuff with U.S. Youth Soccer as well. So, man, the youth game is unbelievable. The talent that I'm seeing, not just on the women's side, but on the boys' side, which is really important, because I think we've always been really on the side. We're even better now. I feel like, the ECNL might be the best youth league as far as developing women for the next level in the world. Now, I just said that no way we're going to win the 2026 World Cup, but I am very clear-headed when I say youth system the U.S. has on the girls' side in this country, I think it's the best in the world, and I think the numbers back it up. When you take a look at the roster of the Olympic team that won the gold medal. I think it was, almost 80% of the team was made up of youth leagues that came out of this country. And I don't think you can say the same thing. We'll go to break down, the men's World Cup today. Now, back when I was there, not only did we not have a major professional league, we might have had 5 players playing overseas. So we had to set up camp for 3 years and travel the world to play games to get ready to host the World Cup. So it's definitely a different world. And how this new coach, again, going back to what I said earlier, matches that level. But to really answer your question, Big Dub, it's changed in so many ways. The biggest way it's changed is when I think about 94, people were like, oh, wow, what is this? And then you have a melting pot of the other teams. The difference now is you still have that melting pot that stayed, or more importantly, you have these people that in 94 got a glimpse of it that now have kids. So they're really involved with their kids. They're really involved with the game. And there's that nice little demographic of younger people that don't have kids yet that are looking for something to do. And some of these stadiums have done it right, like Columbus and Portland and Seattle, where you can hang out at a bar and then walk to the game and then go back and enjoy it together. It's changed the dynamic. And I think those are going to be a key part of why this is going to be the biggest World Cup. The big difference between 30 years ago and now is that whole generation, and then that middle generation of the younger ones, they wake up every day watching the Premier League, probably even more than they watch Major League Soccer, to be fair. Like if there was a poll, the Premier League probably ranks higher. I think you stir all that stuff together, and you now got a nation of soccer fans and followers that, in fact, to support what you guys were saying, that do believe we're going to win the World Cup, or at least want that more than anything else in the world. And because of that, I think there's added excitement to it. I was just trying to keep it real early on because I think it's going to be really, really hard to win the World Cup. Man, if it happens, I'll come on here and I'll eat 27 crow and do some other crazy things. But, look, I think the biggest thing is if they can do something they've never done before, and that is win 2 games out of the knockout round, then people will be like masterclass. If they do make it out of the group play and get that first game, that'll be good enough for me. The rest of the country will probably be mad and they'll say, oh, they were a failure and that type of thing. But I mean, come on, if you get out of it and somehow the way it shakes out, you end up having to play right off the bat like a Brazilian team or a German team, whatever. I mean, it's tough to beat those teams at any time, let alone on the biggest stage.
And it's a great point, and I love everything about what you said, and I am in agreement with you that the men's national team are not going to win a World Cup, and obviously, if they were to prove me wrong, I would still be the happiest man on earth. So, probably right up there, right? I think the birth of my kids still a little higher, maybe slightly a little higher than a World Cup victory. But with that being said,
getting married,
yeah, my way. but I think it's important that we talk about this because talent is a big deal, and obviously, when it comes to talent, I don't. We are still so far behind collectively the rest of the world. I asked this question of Lexi Lawless the last time I talked to him, and I ask this question to people all the time on our team, on the U.S. men's national team. What player on our team would start on Argentina? What player on our team would start on Brazil? What player on our team would start on Germany? Right? Um, and none of them, right? I mean, maybe one in certain
maybe
circumstances, but
Pulisic.
yeah.
Maybe.
Well, again, argument wise, again, there could be okay, but again, okay, maybe where they're like 12 or 13 or 14 on that depth chart, right? Maybe they're like they're right off that first sub, right? Would Pulisic be the first sub off the bench in a situation? Possibly, and that to me is how we know that we're not there. Because the argument is who would be starting, right? Because we know right now who would start on Argentina on our team. We
Right.
would take home. I mean, like, right? I'd take that one. Let's start taking players. I mean, that's how you know.
Just take the team, actually.
Yeah,
that's all right.
take the entire team, right?
Yeah. Thanks.
But that's how we look at this, right? And it's not. But then again, take that aside for a second, and let's go back to 1980. You used the word miracle here a little bit ago about Al Michaels. It's a miracle, right? Well, a bunch of nobody had whoever, no one, no name, whatever, college kids stepped onto an ice rink in Lake Placid, 1980, and beat an all-star, the most notable hockey team in the history of mankind, who had won everything, you know, and they still found a way to win and to win the gold in that tournament. So, talent aside for a second, it can be done. History has shown it can be done that you can take a bunch of players who don't necessarily have all the talent, but they find a way collectively to understand what's at stake and pull it together. Why aren't we seeing that? Why can't, is it not, can we not do it? Is it wrong for me to compare that environment to this environment? I mean, I don't know. I feel like the grit and the toughness and the American, like, just this blue collar mentality is, can we win off of something like that when we don't have the talent, but just win on sheer like willpower and just like carrying the United States on our shoulders and going out and playing?
Wow, I love your take, JT. That's awesome, and that's really well said. And to make sure we give Al Michaels credit, the line is, "Do you believe in miracles?" And I think kind of the way you said it is, why don't we go ahead and have that mantra, that mentality, that belief as world is, and because of that, I applaud you, because you kind of gave me chills, by the way, thinking about if that can happen. I think my answer is, totally different, just two totally different sports and the way they work. Hockey, comparison to soccer and the kind of breaks you get and, who gets, sent into the box. I'm not a massive hockey fan, so I apologize, but, totally different. I feel like soccer. I mean, in fact, even in '94, if you think about it, we played Brazil, who, by the way, won that World Cup, right? We played them toe to toe. I was there. I was on the field. Leonardo took out arguably one of the best players to ever wear the U.S. uniform, Tab Ramos. I remember going at halftime and Bora shakes saying, play, and his eyes rolling back in the back of his head. The dude had a fractured skull and was never the same player again. But what people forget is we played the rest of that game, because it happened near the end of the first half, up a man, and still lost to Brazil in what was a 90% pro-American crowd, right? So just to kind of give you the perspective of, for whatever reason, in the elite level of the international game of soccer, those teams, no matter what the situation is, are just prepared, prepped, and then at the end of the day have different abilities than our young men have. I think that's changing, like I said earlier, because of the fact that they're all playing over in Europe and pretty high level. But are they all playing enough? Kind of back to my point earlier, are they showing, to go back to what I thought was another analogy, you guys are your game, take Argentina. How many was there, a spot on that team for Pulisic to start? I don't know, but if they came back over, no. So because of all of that, man, Jonathan, again, I love the notion of, do you believe in miracles? And it happened in North America, but I just don't think they're wired that way yet, where even, the top man upstairs is going to say, hey, I can make everything happen, where the ball's going to roll in one more time than the other teams. I mean, unless they go on some mad run where defensively they're not team score and their goalkeeper stands on their head and that type of thing. I just think it's going to take a lot. I don't want people saying, hey, Dean Linke's saying the team's not any good. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying, I mean, let's be real here. That's the World Cup. They're not ready to win the World Cup. Will the World Cup lifetime? I know Big W is going, well, probably not in your lifetime, Dean, but definitely in my lifetime.
Maybe.
Are you still drinking milk right now there, Big W? Nathan, are you drinking some milk this
water
morning?
with Mio. Don't worry about the orange color. No, I think it's really important what you're saying. My other thing is I think with the introduction of, it was interesting when Messi came over to play in the United States. I remember kind of tracking that entire experience, and he went to. I remember the first time he got to the U.S. I don't know what supermarket he went to. It was some big supermarket down in Miami, and people were following him around, and he's like, there's everything is here. Like there's nothing that doesn't exist in this store right now. Like this is awesome, And his first introduction to America was like, wow, like this place is actually kind of cool. And now obviously he's playing down in Miami, but the initial response to that was, wow, like we have arguably the greatest soccer player of all time playing in the United States down in Miami. And so you felt that, I guess, a little bit of a surge in the popularity of the game, and obviously bringing more people out to those games in Miami.
You're not a little bit, a lot.
What's
yeah,
that?
Not a little bit, a lot. I mean, he's created amazing.
Yeah.
And I think
ticket sales alone.
Yeah.
I don't Pele or Maradona, but in my opinion, nobody will ever compare to Messi as the greatest player in the game. He is the Michael Jordan of the game.
Yeah, right. So, but you saw obviously that surge in popularity. Is that something that the U.S. maybe can start considering? Is how do we get more superstars, bona fide superstars, to want to, even if it's at the tail end of their career, come play on American soil? Because I think the simple act of getting them to the U.S. to play, even if it's just a game or a series of games, I think that gives people something to look at and get excited about. Because here's why I think the World Cup in the U.S. is huge. It's because the best superstars in our game, Mbappe, all these guys, they're going to be playing in the United States. Right. So I made the comparison to the 92 Dream Team and like basketball the other day. Now I know those are two completely different games, but the biggest thing was Magic, Larry, all those guys. They all went and they played at the Olympics, and everybody came from everywhere to either watch them, or these teams that played against them, they wanted signatures and they wanted all this stuff after the game because they were the headliners. You think bringing those superstars to the American soil will help kind of spur this movement a little bit more, being able to see them here in the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's already there. And I love, you just had somebody right in there. I was actually with the U.S. team when we beat Brazil in the Coliseum. So, I mean, we are capable of beating Brazil. And he's saying here we beat Spain well, great and beat Brazil. So he's absolutely right. I mean, there are times when we are going to beat those teams. But yeah, I think what you're saying, Big W, is, Christian Pulisic at some point is going to come back and wear a uniform in MLS and that type of thing. Is that what you're saying? The top, and then we really, we double.
Yeah, not necessarily just Americans, but some of the top players in this game coming to the U.S. to play.
Oh yeah, that's. I mean, that's happened already. I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Zlatan's been here. David Beckham's been here. Now we've got Messi here, and Messi's brought Suarez. Actually, I'm glad that they met, because I think you're going to see more and more of that. What I would like to see, actually, if it means they're going to get better, and that's the question, because right now in Europe, it's a tier above MLS. But if they were coming back here to still be a part of the World Cup team, star. I also would love to see those American players that are over there come back and do it when they're ready. And that's what I thought you meant. But to answer your question, yeah, you're going to see a ton more of those. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he can get out of his Jonathan Turner-like salary over in the desert. I feel like Ronaldo could come over here at 44 even and still do some pretty special things. I wouldn't be surprised if he's considering it, right? Because who doesn't want to be in America? And the last thing I do is, to me, the fascinating story about that going into the grocery stores for Messi was not that this stuff. I think what he was moved the most by, Big W, is nobody knew who he was. So he just he walked around the that's his story. He walked around the grocery store and nobody everywhere else in the world, everybody knows who he is, that type of thing. Right. And it's starting to happen now in this country where he's been team even for the marginal fan, because the things that he can do, even as in his advanced age. Which, wait, can we use this moment to just go ahead and say that you guys agree with me that there is no situation where Messi does not play for Argentina, because he hasn't really committed just yet. You know that, right? Like, but being here in America, doing what he does for Miami, and I'm more like begging you two to just tell me, yes, he's going to be playing, because I can't imagine with everything he's done in this country, with the World Cup coming here and Miami even being one of the venues, they'll probably figure out a way somehow to, you know, get them a game in although it doesn't matter where Messi plays, it's going to be sold out. But you know, that's kind of my take on that question, Big W. I hope I answered it okay.
No, you did. Yeah.
I actually think, by the way, I do agree that Messi will be playing in the next World Cup. So we can put that out to bed to right now. He is playing in the World Cup, no question about that. Now, here's the thing. I know that when MLS is being taken seriously, and when we have gotten to the level of European status, where players will come here not at the end, but the middle. Right, and that's where that right now is where players come. David Beckham, Messi, Suarez, they're all coming on the tail end of their careers, and they're having success here. Now, would Messi have the same success, you know, in the Premier League right now? Would he have the same success in Bundesliga? Would he have that same success in the Champions League? Now, I'm not saying that he wouldn't have some success, but he would not be having anywhere near the same success he's having here, right? He's on the tail end of his career. He's a very good player. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the best player, right? But there's a reason why he's here. It's because he wanted to come to America. And number two is he wanted to still play at a high level and have success. And he's getting that here in the U.S. He wouldn't get that anywhere else in the world. And we'll know as a country when the MLS is considered maybe equal or close to, when players start coming here, not at the end of the career, but the beginning and the middle of their career. And that to me is when we know we've made it as in the MLS. Um, and then to go back to what I was talking about earlier about this idea that, you know, is there a miracle moment, right, for the men's national team? I know that hockey is a different sport, so I don't want to compare hockey to soccer, but we have seen Cinderella stories in soccer, right? We just saw it here in the College Cup, not 3 months ago, right? 2 months ago, right? I mean, first time ever, right? Vermont wins College Cup. I mean, no one had. I mean, if you're talking about picking teams at the beginning of a season, right? We know Indiana's always in that conversation, right? Always in the conversation for a national title, right? Always in the conversation is maybe a Maryland, right? In the conversation, right? You're talking about, okay, who could go win this thing? It could be a Maryland, right? They're very good. They always have good soccer teams, right? You can go across and maybe it's UCLA or on the West Coast, right? Start looking at some of those colleges. Vermont was never in the conversation. At least I don't believe that they were in that conversation. So that's a Cinderella story. So how did they get there? And I would say it's even harder to win a College Cup, you know, just based on the fact you can play a lot more games. I mean, you know, in the tournament aspect, it's single elimination for the whole thing. I'm curious your thoughts on that, because Cinderella stories do happen.
Yeah, and they do. And Vermont is a wonderful story, and they've got a wonderful coach who has so much pride in that university. But they got there the way Marshall got there. I mean, they went the international route. They've got guys that have professional experience. They're older. So Indiana's still kind of doing it the old-fashioned way. Some of the other teams aren't, but I don't blame them. I mean, you know, they're really well coached. They've got excellent recruiters. I mean, Chris Grassi at Marshall, who, by the way, was an assistant coach at Michigan for several years with Steve Burns, and was part of that team that went to the 2010 College Cup that the Akron Zips won. So he's been around long enough to get it. Chris Grassi gets it. I mean, and he doesn't just recruit, you know, Iceland. I mean, the guy recruits Japan. The guy recruits Sweden. The guy recruits Iceland, Norway. I mean, recruits South America, recruits the whole thing. So it's harder for me, JT, to call that, you know, a true miracle, because the college game is so different. And by the way, there are going to be a lot of announcements coming up pretty soon on a different dynamic to the college game. I think they're going to get closer. It's not going to happen this year, but I think it's going to get closer to the full 10-month season. And I think it's going to change in that I think U.S. soccer, which I got to give U.S. soccer a ton of credit. I'm a former U.S. soccer FedExer. I'll always consider myself a U.S. soccer ambassador and proud to be associated with U.S. soccer in every way. But U.S. soccer is opening their doors to the youth leagues again and trying to figure out what's going to work since they dropped the DA. And more importantly, they're opening their doors to college soccer to truly integrate it. Because let's face it, we haven't talked about the women much, which I love talking about. So hopefully in another year, you'll have me back on, JT. See if I make the year limit. All right, he's done. We'll bring him back
Well,
in.
you actually, I thought we talked about you coming on every Tuesday. Every Tuesday, I thought you were coming on. I maybe I misspoke. That was your contract. I could have swore we had a every Tuesday deal, but
Well, we can work on that, my friend. Because I love hanging out with you guys. But the women all along have used college soccer not just to build our women's national team program, but there's a ton of players that have played for Mexico and Canada, and even Japan. Has sent over some of their best players to play for Florida State and that type of thing. So I think that's the biggest difference. If you really analyze Vermont's roster and Marshall's roster and that type of thing, it's a different kind of team than Indiana and kind of the teams that we used to have. This is not the first time this has happened. Back in the day, Clemson had all international players. Howard, the entire team was like the Trinidad and Tobago, national team, back in the days when Lincoln Phillips was running it. So that's the biggest difference. I have trouble because college soccer is kind of my life. I love it. So I don't care who's playing. I do give the Big Ten a lot more credit because I feel like the Big Ten, the majority of those teams aren't all just international superstars. They have a few, and they pick up a few transfer portal internationals, which are really key. But I feel like the heart of their teams are American born. And now that U.S. soccer is getting behind it, hopefully they can lift up those American born players even more, use college soccer, and then get them to the next level, which, maybe at simplest form is MLS, play really well and get a call up, and then maybe get a call to go overseas, which is the pattern right now. Eventually, hopefully we all feel like, and you touched on it, MLS is so good, they don't need to leave because the competition is so good. They're getting better every day. The coaches are seeing them every day. And that integration, because you started with Big W, you asked the question, like, why are these all-star teams so much better at the other levels? Well, they've just been doing it longer. And so they get every set of how to do that, taking advantage of every moment that they come together. And then on the biggest stage, elevating that to a level that gives them the opportunity to hoist the trophy at the end of the World Cup.
no, I think
yeah.
I think that's I guess another great point. And what I was going to say here, and I know Nathan has a point to make as well.
Oh yeah, go
We asked
ahead.
this question. We asked this question yesterday in regards to the women's game in general. Is that when it comes to women's soccer in this country, there's no question that the women's game has been better, right? Better outcomes, right? 4 World Cup titles. We cannot argue. And again, we're not going to come. Not comparing, but outcome wise, women have done better on the international level. And obviously, the areas where they have struggled in the United States and domestically has been in their league, right? Their leagues are still young, right? We've gone through a number of leagues, and that a lot of that has been because, and you probably know more about this than I do from your perspective, is that there was a lot of in the early years trying to figure out funding and the money component to this, which is still a big part of the men's game, still too, right? Finding money for these leagues to stay afloat is one of the biggest challenges because, again, if you're an advertiser. You've got football, basketball, and then soccer. So your money coming down here, you're getting the fourth or fifth budget, into these leagues. But the women's game has grown substantially, right? We've got now 2 professional leagues here in this young country with the the NWSL, and now the Women's Super League on the USL side, right? And those leagues are starting to really grow, right? Um, but the one thing I still see a struggle with, and we talked about this yesterday with me and Nathan did, is about fans and fan base, right? Caitlin Clark helped elevate basketball and women's sports in this country, probably more so than any other athlete in the last decade. I mean, we could talk about the Alex Morgans and before that, other players that came down, Mia Hamm's. But I mean, Caitlin Clark in 2024 elevated the women's game in such a way that, I mean, everywhere she goes, she's got a fans following her. And we said if women's sports are relying on the men to show up and bring their families to their games, it's probably not the right way to do this, right? If you want the women's game to grow, it's going to have to start with, like, when I was a kid, my dad took me to a baseball game, took me to a Lions game, right? He took me, right? Now I can take my daughters and things like that, but I'm saying the mothers have to take their daughters to these events, right? Get the mother and the daughter to have that experience that can then go, okay, now later on down the line, I'll take my daughter to the same thing. It's to kind of build a generational thing of love for sports and women's athletics. What's your take on that? Because I feel like if you're relying just on the men to bring their families and their kids, that, and I compared it to like a rom com, right? I compared it like, well, most men aren't going to go like, hey hon, let's go to the rom com tomorrow. No, it's more like, hey honey, let's go to the rom com from the wife. We go on a Friday night to watch the movie. But what is your take on that?
First of all, I'm first in line for the rom-com, even in front of my wife, and I'm confident in my masculinity to say unabashed that I have no problem with that. Look, I feel like the women's league has made it, and I feel like with just a couple adjustments, they're there. And I'll give Caitlin Clark credit for it, but make no mistake, women's sports are now on the map. The NWSL is now in double-digit years, so they're no longer a fledgling league. They are adding more teams this year, more quality players. We're starting to see the return of the top international players come back to NWSL. Are we losing, like on the men's side, a few of the best U.S. players to overseas? We are. Am I a little bit concerned about that? I am, but I think, look, at any point in your life when you've got a chance to go somewhere different and experience a different culture and do the thing that you love, I think there's a natural pull. So I don't blame these players for the U.S. women that are going overseas to play professionally and then coming back with the U.S. team, because, man, they're good, and we're only going to get better. And look, the women's game, we remain the dominant force. And it's only going to get better because of what I talked about earlier, the incredible work at the youth system with, these top youth clubs. And I think, arguably the best in the world. So I'm not worried about the women. I get your point. Not every NWSL team is getting, the Messi type crowds or the 50,000, 60,000. But when it's on and there's time to promote it and that type of thing, you're seeing, 20,000 in LA, 20,000 in San Diego, Portland. It sells out every game, no matter what. Right here at home, would I like to see the North Carolina Courage with just a little bit bigger crowds? Yeah, because they're good and they've been good the entire time. And they've had a few more games last year where they got over 10,000 people. So, and really, Jonathan, back to your point, and the Caitlin Clark factor is on even in soccer. I mean, women's sports has been elevated to where the big corporations want to get behind it. The more they get behind it, the more things you can do for exposure, including TV. So I still think the women are already there, and they're going to go even further. And then just watching Emma Hayes, I mean, I can't wait to watch that Japan game because they're a really, really tidy game. But, I mean, Emma's got, she played two entirely different teams and with limited exposure from the team that won the gold medal when I was over in Paris, and I went to all their games and was so impressed with what she did in such a short order. I mean, I think Emma Hayes can return us to a superpower where we can rattle off, multiple World Cups again. Is it going to be easy? No, because you're right. England's really good now. Spain's really good now. Denmark's really good now. Brazil, was right there knocking on the door. They're really good now. But the U.S., to me, is better and always will be.
I feel like U.S. women's soccer has been the model of consistency in a lot of different ways. Even when they went out and beat Australia, they beat them with a new group than what they had the game previous. And it feels like you can kind of plug and place and still go out and have success. And JT and I talked about it yesterday. There are extenuating circumstances that I feel like have allowed the U.S. women's soccer team to really kind of gain that foothold in the world. But that's not to tear down. That's not to take away from anything they've done in terms of the consistency of coaching, player development. Obviously, I think the culture at the college level is far better on the women's side than it is necessarily on the men's side. And when we talk about player development, because I think that's extremely important. And I think when we talk about these European countries, they have a model that they follow, and it's a lot of the same faces and it's a lot of the same people, and they've been able to kind of build this juggernaut, this machine that can consistently churn out good international talent. I feel like the women's game has that. They have the consistency side down. I know that you wanted to talk about the women's side, but I was curious about the men's side in this question a little bit earlier. You see it on the college level. So you see these kids developing live and in real time, these 17, 18-year-olds that come in and get better over their stretch. Do you feel like maybe there is a lack of consistency when it comes to developing the best available players in the United States? Because we have so many different leagues, we have so many different levels, we have so many different things going on across the US, and we're massive, right? Size-wise, you can't compare us to a place like the UK. You can drive across the UK in one day. You can't drive through Michigan in one day barely if you want to go top to bottom. Is there a lack of consistency in how we are building the best available talent right here in our country on the men's side?
There is, but I would rather say with great hope in my heart, there was, because I'm convinced that U.S. soccer, with this move to Atlanta and what they're saying, and the fact that they are for the first time inviting to the quote table the leaders of the top youth leagues across the country, and to repeat myself, the college coaches to the table, which they've never been to the table, really. I mean, they haven't. The United Soccer Coaches, a different entity, is kind of run that. They've done the rankings and the awards and everything else, but it's, only been from kind of long distance, but less with the development. Do they do incredible coaching education? Talking about United Soccer Coaches, yes. Does U.S. Soccer do incredible coaching education? Absolutely. Has that translated to the college level and that development? Not yet, but man, I do feel like it's coming. Like everything I'm hearing is that U.S. Soccer is saying we got to use college soccer the way we've used it for women's soccer, and we've got to embrace this incredible level of quality on the youth side for the women. And then I think because of that, it's close. On the men's side, it's not there yet, like you said, but because of what I just told you, the fact that they're bringing them to the table, I think it's closer, Big W, than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's it's another great point. And when we talk about consistency, the one challenge in everything in life, it doesn't matter whether it's coaching, it's playing, it's any job, you have good, you've got average, you've got great, maybe some bad in there, right? And not every coach looks at, or every player is going to go out into an environment and give it their all, quote unquote, right? And obviously, the athletes who are looking to go to the highest level in this country, you would like to assume that they have that work ethic that will get them that drive, that will get them to where they want to go, right? But there are a lot of players out there that along the way maybe lose sight of that, and they struggle. I think the same thing can be said about coaches, about administrators, right? And about, associations, right? All across the world, not just, it's not like a unique situation here in the United States. But if we talk about the consistency model, what we just talked about this. We believe that the ECNL is one of the best leagues, if not the best league at the youth level in this country, right? It has developed, it has grown leaps and bounds. Great work by the leadership in the ECNL to develop, and that's why it is leaps and bounds. Like, again, if you look at all the other leagues around the country, ECNL is right there. It's right there at the top, if it's not the top in every category, right? And you have, but then again, you have the MLS Next on the boys' side, right? That the MLS Next is a feeder right into the MLS programs, right? That's development. And if you go across the pond to the UK, the MLS Next is the equivalent of what you have when you start talking about Chelsea's academy program, right? At the very bottom, it's Chelsea all the way up. You're 8 years old, and you just go all the way up. And that's what the MLS Next is designed to be, right? It's designed to be this. Yep, you start here and you go just all the way up, just trajectory right up to the Columbus Crew, right? But here's the biggest conundrum. I know probably we don't have enough time probably to answer this question, but I think this is a good one. Might be a doozy. Um, the player, and I had this conversation with a coach in a restaurant here a couple years ago. We talked about this. Where is the next Lionel Messi, but for the United States? Where is that player located? Is that player located in Beverly Hills, California? Are they located in, Rochester, Michigan, Raleigh, North Carolina? Or are they located maybe in Pontiac, inner city Detroit, inner city LA, right? Where maybe mom and dad don't have the funds or the transportation to get their child to and from games, right? Maybe they lack the awareness, but this kid just loves playing with the ball in their backyard, or on the street, right? Just touching the ball, right? Every chance they get. That blue collar, hardworking, just passionate, loves the game for everything that it is. And the only thing holding that child back is the money side of it. And is that where these kids are? Is that where like this next player that could change the whole dynamic of the game is right now in the United States? Or are they on the ECNL field, at 13, where mom and dad are paying $40,000 a year for that kid to get there?
No, you nailed it, JT. They are missing that part of it, but they are efforting it. I do know that. U.S. Soccer is with the foundation behind them and other foundations, they're all in on finding, for lack of a better word, those diamonds that are out there that aren't being exposed at all, and nobody's seeing their shiny points and colors and everything else. And I think that's where they might be, Jonathan. You're on to something really big there. But I also know, just like what I told you about the future of college soccer, I feel like for real, U.S. Soccer is efforting to try to find them. So let's hope that you're there. And you know what? I kind of want to change one take and say, why not? Why not a miracle on grass in 2026? One ball
Yeah.
here or there. Why not, man? That's why we're going to be tuning in for them to win the World Cup. So why not go ahead and do it and get it done? Your listener reminded me of games that I was at where we did beat the Brazils. We did go toe to toe, and we have beat Germany before. So yeah, why not, man? Let's go ahead and win it in
Yeah.
2026, Big W.
I agree. I agree. And this is a great question. And this is the thing what is the biggest setback or whole? I want to change that question. What I actually think is not a setback. I think the biggest thing that holds back American soccer is that the collective team just has not found a way to gel and not found a way to really come together. That has been the biggest thing holding this team back. They have talent. And do they have talent anywhere near close to that? No, of course not. But the American style of play, which is blue collar, it's hardworking, it's gritty, it can be ugly at times, sexy at times, it can be beautiful, it can be all these different things to explain it. But the one thing that I feel like we're just missing is that the entire team is out there battling like as a unit, as a collective unit. And that's the one thing holding them back. Because that's the only thing that right now that I truly believe that puts them in a position to win a World Cup. When you don't have the talent, you have to outwork everybody else. You have to be the tougher, grittier team. You have to. If you lack something, it's got to come from someplace else. And right now, the men's national team is lacking that sixth sense, so to speak, right? They have the other five. They need that sixth. That sixth sense will get them over the goal line, get them over the end line. At least that's my perspective. I'm curious your final take before we wrap things up.
Yeah, my final take is hopefully the new coach. I got to believe that he's thought all about that on how to get them to gel and is trying to integrate, his, culture is an overused word. It's one of those kind of words that you love and another word that makes you eye roll at times if it's overused. But if he integrates it, then yeah, they can get there. And if not, 2030 over in Portugal and Spain, maybe the U.S. team can make a ton of noise. It'll be a different cycle where they'll be together more because they have to qualify for the World Cup, and that changes the dynamic. Great questions, though, by both of you. I really enjoyed it.
I do think, though, real quick, though, I think if they just take a play out of Ted Lasso's playbook and they all go down and start cleaning a sewer, in the city, that might be a good That might be a good team building exercise.
Not a bad idea. Not a terrible idea.
But hey, Dean, man, we appreciate you being a part of the show here today. It was a fun to get a chance to talk to you about this. It's a very important topic, and no one better to talk about it than someone who's been involved in the World Cup on many different levels in the game of soccer as a whole. So we appreciate you stopping by today.
Thanks to you both. It was a real pleasure and honor. Thank you so much.
Yes,
You're very
sir. Thank
welcome.
you.
That's a wrap here on episode number 35. Holy cow, it's 35 of these since the beginning of the year, Nathan. We've had a blast every single day, live Monday through Friday, unless one of us are sick or on a plane. But most days that we do this. But we appreciate you all watching nonetheless. Again, subscribe, like us, share with your friends and family. Come back tomorrow morning on Hump Day here on Inside the Game. Nathan, again, as always, thank you, buddy. Dean, thank you. You've been watching Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network.
This has been a presentation of the National Soccer Network.